So what we're doing is applying basically is light, photons, which are particles of light. They go through the skull. Only about 2.5% of the light actually gets to the brain. And then what happens, that photon goes to your energy mitochondria. They're the energy factories of the cell. They're like little batteries in the cell. And it basically allows ATP, which is the energy molecule for all of life, to be released. Now your brain cells have energy, and now they can do repair, and they know what to do.
Hello. Well, this is Diane Gilman, proud host of Too Young to Be Old, and formerly I was the Queen of Jeans. We have got probably the hottest topic for age reversal that you are ever going to be able to hear from a source. Dr. Robert Hedaya, and this is about preventing and perhaps even more importantly, reversing dementia and Alzheimer's. Yeah, you heard me right. I'm talking about a doctor who has discovered nirvana when it comes to aging. And when you think about it, all of us who are 50 plus and even younger, what do we think of when we think of aging? We think of Alzheimer's and dementia as the end of life. And that is the biggest, number one fear. Well, doctor, let's just get into it. You make really bold claims, but you can back them up. You say that not only have you found the key to preventing Alzheimer's and dementia, but you actually have come up with a treatment that reverses it. And we're going to talk about one of your patients, 70 years old, and how you took her back from the brink, and she has a perfectly functional brain now. Doctor, thank you for coming on a layman's program like mine. But the real truth is, too young to be old, that always is a message of in your brain, in your thoughts. You may always be too young to be old, but if you start losing your thoughts, you're losing the battle against aging. How, as a psychiatrist, did you come to this particular niche, which is so elemental today? And how did you form your laser therapy for dementia?
Hi, Diane. Thank you, first of all, for giving me the opportunity. I want to be very clear about dementia prevention. It's clearly possible, and at the very worst, it's dementia delay by years. So that's certainly possible. Dementia is an umbrella category. People need to understand there are different types of dementia. And what they also need to understand is that it comes in phases. So the first phase is called mild cognitive impairment. You know, you can't remember things, maybe a little confused, etc. And then it can be the first stage of dementia and the second, and then the final stage right before the last months or days or years of dementia. So we can actually prevent or delay and actually reverse mild cognitive impairment, and even stop and even reverse, mild dementia, first stage dementia. Stage 2, we can slow down and stop. Stage 3, we can't really do much. Okay. So that to be clear. So prevention is key here. Prevention is key. Early recognition is key, et cetera. Now, to answer your question, basically the simple answer is that I learned early in my career that what was being billed as psychiatric problems and psychological problems, actually, most of it turns out to be physical problems, meaning, you're having panic attacks. Well, guess what? You might have a B12 deficiency. You might have a histamine problem, et cetera. Then you develop psychological problems around it. One thing led to another. I learned all about the hormones and the immune system and infections and genetics and epigenetics, all these things, so that really I'm very strong on the idea that before you label someone with having a mental psychiatric problem, you have to look at their physiology, their physical problems, treat those, and then see what you're left with. Now, all of the systems that I deal with are very fundamental. They're important to the whole body. So if you deal with inflammation, it could affect your joints, it could affect your heart, your blood vessels, but it also can affect your brain. So by 2002, actually, it was very clear to me that dementia had a strong inflammation component and a strong hormonal component. And I actually started to work on that at that point and reversed my first case of early dementia, stage 1 dementia, in 2009. And
How did you do that? And so you got somebody, first of all, who was at a point in dementia where they were still cognitive enough to say to you, oh, you want to put laser on my brain? Okay. I mean, how many people do you have that you see or that contact you? I can't see that anybody would say no. The treatment sounds a little like, yeah, okay. Is this going to be all right for me? I don't know. I'm just a layman. How does that laser
so first of
treatment
all, understand
work?
that the treatment, there's three parts to the treatment, three baskets, if you will. There's the standard neuropsychiatric treatment, which is medications, okay? And then the second basket is functional medicine. Functional medicine is looking at your physiology, your sleep, your exercise, your hormones, your nutrition, your genetics, your everything. So it's the physiology. Functional medicine is root cause medicine. So we look for the root causes of the
Ah,
dementia. And the third basket is the high lane technology, which is hyperbaric oxygen, laser, which is guided by something called a QEEG, and neural brain exercises. So those are the three baskets. It's not just, oh, you come in for dementia and we're going to point a laser at your brain. No, I spend
who
I
knew?
spend I spend 4 hours with my patients when I see them initially. Yesterday, I spent 5.5 hours with the patient just to get to the root causes and figure out, okay, what's exactly going on here, and then we'll treat concurrently what's going on in the body, what toxins are there, what are they missing, and we will also concurrently at the same time use the laser or use hyperbaric or use neurofeedback or other exercises.
Okay, what does hyperbaric do for you?
Hyperbaric,
That's the oxygen, right?
hyperbaric is a chamber, a high pressure chamber, which you can actually have in your own home, or you can come into the office or centers around the country that use it. And they come in different pressures, but you can use a low pressure hyperbaric oxygen chamber that increases blood flow, oxygen delivery to the tissues. In particular, we're talking about the brain. Helps develop stem cells and other protective and neurogenerative proteins, etc. So it's very,
Yeah,
very helpful.
that's the chamber that Michael Jackson loved to sleep in at night because he was sure it was going to keep him young forever. So that's what we know about it. That's, as a layman, that's what I know about it. And I also know people that are in the beauty industries, modeling industries, who swear by that hyperbaric chamber and believe it is the key, at least in terms of look, to keep them looking younger forever. Um, what does the laser do, and how do you get to your prescription of laser?
Great
How does
question.
that work?
So first, what we do is we do something called a quantitative EEG, which is basically you put a cap on your head. It measures the electrical activity in your brain from 19 points, and then artificial intelligence. And this is, by the way, developed in collaboration with the National Institute of Health. So it's a great database. It's very reliable, and there's thousands and thousands of publications on this. We do the QEG, and we can tell from that cap. It's a 1 hour recording, which we can do anywhere in the country in your own home, and
Ooh,
that tells us what the brain is doing on its surface. It tells us what the highways, the networks, so to speak, are doing, and then I can analyze that based on the symptoms, based on what's going on, I decide where, if it's appropriate to use the laser, then I decide where to apply the laser. Now, the laser is, laser is kind of a scary term. You think of this light burning paper, a hole in a paper or something.
You know what, doctor? It's not that scary for me. Honestly, I go to my dermatologist and I get a laser on my face. And I remember the first time I got it, I said, "Oh, were you eating a hamburger for lunch? Because I smell smells like broiling flesh." And she
Right.
said, "Oh no, dear, that's just your skin." I'm like,
Well, so we don't do that. That's not what we're doing. We are not destroying tissue or anything like that. So what we're doing is applying, basically, is light, photons, which are particles of light. They go through the skull. Only about 2.5% of the light actually gets to the brain. And then what happens, that photon goes to your energy mitochondria. They're the energy factories of the cell. They're like little batteries in the cell. And it basically allows ATP, which is the energy molecule for all of life, to be released. Now your brain cells have energy, and now they can do repair, and they know what to do.
Ooh, fantastic. And then do you put that together with a pharmacology routine where you've got supportive supplements to
Yes.
keep the brain going in the right direction?
Yes, we do. We're very data based. We don't really guess. So we do a thorough testing, and then based on the testing, we can know what you need. Based on genetics, we know what you need, and then we give you what you need, and then we retest to make sure we've accomplished our goals. Right.
Now, I was reading up because you've written 3 books on this, and there is a case study that you offer of a 70-year-old woman, and you reversed her dementia, which is an incredible story. And I don't think that people even know that this is possible. But give us a brief history of this particular patient and how the treatment took place, how long it took, and how successful it was.
Okay. So first of all, just to tell you, this is published, and this was actually a 58-year-old woman when she came to me. She had such a strong family history of dementia, and she had ApoE4, which is a gene that puts you at risk for Alzheimer's. She had 2 of the genes, which is the worst possible combination, and she had early dementia or mild cognitive impairment. She was really struggling, but she was running her own business and struggling. And she came to me and she said, I said, this treatment with all the testing and everything's cost you probably about $50,000 over the course of a year and a half. Not to me, it's labs, it's all this stuff. And she said, look, if I don't have my brain, what do I have? I have 50,000 in the bank. If I don't have my brain, what do I have? So she went all in and she did everything. Now, the first 6 months, we did the functional medicine, which is the root cause medicine stuff, because I wasn't doing the laser at that time. I wasn't doing the QEG. I was still learning that stuff, right? And so then after 6 months, she was much better, but still having some memory problems and whatnot. Much better in many ways, and still with symptoms. And then I was ready to actually do the QEG. So I did the QEG, and I was blown away. So basically, if you were looking at the thing right now, you'd see the person's brain, and a lot of areas in the person's brain are yellow, and yellow means unstable, not functioning properly. And the worst place where the crosshairs are on that picture, the red crosshairs are right on the hippocampus. The hippocampus is where you form memories. It's a major source of memory. And her hippocampus was markedly abnormal. And then we treated her based on this. I said, well, okay, we're going to treat you here and here with the laser. And then you'll see the second image is just the same image, but it's all gray, meaning the whole brain has been normalized, including the hippocampus is gray. It's normal after 30 treatments.
And what brought you to the conclusion that you should use laser? And what did the laser do?
So what brought me to the conclusion was I was on a forced vacation, basically, and I was in a hammock for 6 hours and reading a book. And I was learning about lasers being used in Russia since 1985. You know, the Russians in certain areas are very advanced. And I thought,
Wow.
hey, the mechanism of the laser, which releases energy, could really help the brain. But how would I know where to apply it? And then I was reading more and I learned about QEG, which I never learned anything about in medical school. And I said, oh, this would tell me where to apply it. So I spent a few years learning these things and then I was ready to apply it. And that's what we did.
So when I think of laser, and this is 100% dedicated podcast to age reversal through reversing as well as preventing dementia. When I think of laser, I think of it burning away
Right.
surface wrinkles and on my skin, but I always think of laser as slightly dangerous. Um, what does the laser do exactly in the brain that helps to either train the brain or get rid of toxins? I'm a
So,
total layman, but I'm old enough to be really worried about dementia.
yeah.
So tell
So
me, doctor.
first of all, we always do an MRI before using the laser to make sure that it's safe. There's no vascular abnormalities or other things. And then the laser, the light goes basically about 2.5% of the light goes through the skull and the meninges and all the layers, etc. And it penetrates into the tissues, the neurons, and the photon basically dislodges a molecule called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is laughing gas, right? Nitric oxide is dislodged from the fourth channel on the mitochondria, and it's dislodged and it increases blood flow to that area. But most importantly, more than the blood flow, it allows the ATP, the energy molecule, to flow through the channel and to go to the neuron. Now the neuron has energy. It knows what to do with energy. And if we want to direct the energy, we'll do neurofeedback or neural exercises after that.
Now, it took 30 treatments of laser to bring this woman's brain back to high function again. But then she's 70. Let's say she's going to live to be 100 or at least 90. So what happens for the rest of her life?
So she was
How
again
do
she
you
was
keep it?
58, and the question, how do you keep it there, is great, perfect, excellent
Yeah.
question, because in some people you just need the treatments and then you're done with the treatments. In people where you have a genetic problem like she does, what we actually did is we stopped the treatment, and 3 months later we repeated the QEG to see whether she maintained it or not, and she didn't maintain it. So she needs
Huh.
maintenance treatment, which takes maybe 5 minutes 2 or 3 times a week. That's it, right? So it's unfortunate that you have to do that, but wow, compared with where we were 10 or 15 years ago, there's something you can do, right?
You know, from a layman's point of view, what I find so dangerous is two things: self-denial that you're in the first stage,
Mm-hmm.
and family denial.
Right.
I had, and I'm not going to in any way identify this person I worked with as my own personal PA, financial PA, scarily enough, for many, many years. And towards the end of our association together, she started to go what we thought was crazy. She would get totally hysterical and be screaming and shouting about the littlest thing,
Mm-hmm.
like, one, why did you spend $10 on lunch? Something like that. Or there would be huge things she would forget, like she was in charge of paying all my bills because I was always traveling, and I would come home time after time to no electricity, no heat, and she would get very defensive. So I understood that there was a section of dementia that brings out unreasonable anger.
Mm-hmm.
When I tried to bridge the gap with her family, she had a big family. They were infuriated that I would even suggest. So I think one of the biggest enemies to treating the disease is you don't want to admit you have the disease.
You're 100% right. Some people are they're aware of it. In fact, you'll find this very interesting. There's a part of the brain called the precuneus, which is involved in self-awareness. And if your precuneus is malfunctioning, you're not aware. You think you're fine, but you're not. Everyone around you might see it, or maybe they're in denial also. Like, for example, the son of one of my patients, uh, he he was his mother got really, we reversed it. She was doing so much better, but she found the program difficult because she had to control her diet. And he was very, this is ridiculous, etc. And basically, he undermined the treatment, and she decided she'd rather eat pasta than get her brain back.
Yeah, I see, and I certainly saw it in the family of my ex-employee, that they were infuriated that I would even suggest it. But from the outside, those of us that had worked with her for a decade, I worked with her for 2 decades, it was so
Yeah,
obvious
yeah.
that there was something very, very, very wrong. And this was someone who's heavy smoker, a drinker,
Yeah.
not somebody who I think was going to take treatment with open arms at all. So you just mentioned something that to me is so important, which is the whole backup to the treatment. When you say that you need to control your diet in order to reverse dementia, what are you doing exactly? What does that mean?
Well, in a broad sense, what it means, most of us are eating too many carbs, processed foods, et cetera. In a broad sense, that's the
I
process. If it doesn't grow that way, don't eat it. So you never saw a Twinkie tree, don't eat it. You know what I mean?
no,
If
no.
it doesn't grow
Yeah.
that way, don't eat it. That's the broad. But what we do is we're much more specific because we're very personalized and precise in what we tell people based on their testing. This is good for you. This isn't good for you. And then we have a nutritionist who will help you create a food plan. But of course, there's a whole addiction and pleasure that we all get from the processed foods. And that's the battle. Right now, some people are motivated enough to do that, and some people are not. Some people have their family support, some people don't. I had a patient whose spouse was hiding, get this, hiding cake in the dishwasher because she couldn't have cake, so he was hiding it in the dishwasher. So, so you know,
I just read a study because I love this whole area, and I think it's so attached to 50 and beyond, growing older more successfully, aging more gracefully. And now we're talking about, honestly, the truth is you can actually reverse aging because aging and Alzheimer's and dementia are so linked together. But I was reading a report that said that if you were of a certain generation, not baby boomers, but below, and you were raised on processed foods, it affected your IQ. Your IQ was lower. Your self, your age expectancy was greatly reduced by as much or as little as a decade or beyond. And your functioning was greatly impaired in terms of how you handled your emotions, like rage, uh, depression, so I see where that's really workable. And actually, it surprises me a little that you say that there's a resistance to it. But I know that it also said in that article that those kind of foods are very addictive.
very, very addictive. Very. Now,
Yeah.
what you're saying about basically the cohort, we call it a cohort, the generations, the older generations are much and were much healthier. So, for example, I measured thyroid function. My grandmother, may she rest in peace, she would now be over 110, say. And her thyroid function was totally normal in her 90s. Now we see abnormal thyroid function in people who are 10, 12, 15 years old. And it's diet, it's environmental chemicals, there's many, many factors involved. The environment, the habitat, if you will, the culture we're in, all of this stuff, all has a big impact.
So when I was a kid in LA, and I was born in 1945. So let's say I was about 5 years old, 4 or 5. My mother used to take me once a week to the kosher butcher. It was chaotic. There's all these guys running around with yarmulkes on, but there's also all these chickens running around. And you chose your chicken, and they beheaded it right in front of you, plucked the feathers out, and that was Sunday dinner. So what I grew up on was food from the direct source.
Right.
In other words, it wasn't KFC, it wasn't Chick-fil-A, which everybody defends and says, oh, it's so delicious. It was, I saw the live animal.
Right.
I knew what it looked like.
Right.
I saw it functioning, and then it's not, and then it's delicious chicken soup or whatever you make out of it. But I think for kids today, they probably, if you brought several animals into a room and you said, which animal makes the food you're eating right now, they wouldn't even know. I think that we are so detached from our food source. So do you believe that the generations below us, if they go on eating that way, are going to actually get dementia sooner in life rather
Well,
than
there's no
later?
question. I mean, the dementia is an epidemic. I mean, really, it used to be a very
Oh, yeah.
rare thing. Maybe it was rare because people died of heart attacks. Maybe that's why, but it's clearly epidemic now, and you can't separate it out from all the things in our environment, right?
You know, the other thing that I find so interesting is at the beginning when Impossible Meat came out, I thought, oh my God, here's the answer. I don't have to eat red meat anymore. I can make a hamburger with this stuff. And then somebody who's very, very cautious about what they ingest said, Diane, if you look at a label and you see a paragraph that long,
Right.
constituting what it is that you're eating, here's the rule: don't eat it.
Right.
So I went to, honestly, very direct food, eat less in restaurants, especially after COVID, want to know more about what my food source is, where it's been, and how to handle it. You know, I'm almost 80. I'm doing everything I can to stave off what I dread the most in old age, which is losing your cognitive skills. So, will eating carefully actually help me slow down dementia? And second part of this question is, how do we find you?
Okay.
Like, if I want to know if this is beginning to advance, and there is actually a way that I can slow it down, or better yet, reverse it. Where are you? I mean, I never heard of this before I met you, and yet I live in a healthcare mecca, which is New York City, some of the best hospitals in the world. I had no clue.
Well, I'll tell you, okay, the easy part of the question, my website is Whole Psychiatry, like Whole Foods, WHOLE, only
I love that.
Whole Psychiatry.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the easy part. Now,
Well, that's that, right.
the prevention thing, eating properly, excellent, making sure you have good sleep, excellent, reasonable exercise, excellent, good social connections, critical, novelty and learning, really important. You know, those are some basic things, right? Make sure you don't have sleep apnea. Make sure you're not B12 deficient. There's some very basic stuff that can be done. And, you know,
I try to use my brain all the time. And part of my decision to leave television, teleretailing, where I was number one, very comfortable, highly respected, was I wasn't using my brain anymore. It scared me. Everything was so automatic. I literally could have been in a light coma and gone ahead and done a TV show. I'd done it so many times. And I've actually heard about some performers who are in their older years now, singers, and they are well into Alzheimer's, but they've done the same show with the same
Yeah, they could do it. Right.
identification songs for so long, like Tony Bennett.
Mm-hmm.
His wife said
Mm-hmm.
he didn't even know he was in a dressing room, and she would just gently remind him, Tony, you're going out on a stage. You've got your songs. Here's your songs. And she said once he got out there and they played the first note, he suddenly remembered where he was. I was afraid I was going to turn into that because I didn't really have to think about it anymore. The medium hadn't changed. It was only my brain, and my brain felt sluggish. Well, I got into podcasting now and social media. I had to learn a whole new craft, a whole new field, a whole new set of rules and demeanor, and I feel really refreshed. Have I done a good thing for
No,
myself?
without question, without question. Reducing your stress is also very important, and
I did that too.
that basically comes with attitude change, improving attitude. That's the most an attitude of gratitude, as they say, right? That's what you want. An attitude every day. Make a list of the things you're grateful. Oh, I can breathe. I can talk. I can walk to the bathroom. I can see. You make a list every day of 18 things before you go to sleep, when you wake up. Just be and cultivate an attitude of gratitude. Your whole physiology changes. Very simple.
You know, that happened. I just wrote a chapter of a women's anthology book, which is international. Actually, was a bestseller on Amazon for a few weeks, called Women Thrive 3. And it was about my attitude of gratitude after breast cancer. And the fact that I look back on breast cancer with no bad memories.
Mm-hmm.
I know that that cancer taught me how precious life was.
That's exactly
And once you have that understanding of what a gift it is to age,
mm-hmm.
you're not the same person
That's correct.
anymore, right?
That's correct.
So that is so okay. So let's say I want to do this for my brain and I want to find out if I'm in the first stages and I want to be able to reverse it. I just go to your website. How expensive is it, doctor, to get your brain back to a functioning, more youthful state?
So it depends. It's a great question. It depends on the situation, really. So, for example, where are you in the stage? Are you coming in for prevention? It's not very expensive. We to basically do what we call a cognoscopy, measure where you are cognitively, see where your brain is, see where the basic functions are. Very simple. See you in a year or 2 years. And just check periodically if you have risk factors, right? But if you're further along, like a guy that came to me, he's from California, he came to me, I'd say in stage 1. And he, between all his testing and equipment he had to buy and everything, it was $140,000. Yeah, so that's 2 cars or 3 cars, right?
Yeah.
But he has his brain, and he has looks like years of good function ahead of him.
And you know what this brings up, because we have I could talk to you forever, but we do have to round this up. Is it seems to me that beyond just classic Western medicine, which actually gives you no alternative for dementia, just says you've got it, here's how fast it's growing, and
take care of your affairs, etc.
And yeah, here's end of life advice. You've got to have money in this country to do anything outside the norm. And that to me is very frustrating. There should be a way that you can have insurance, especially Medicare, where they support this kind of treatment. And I am sure it will come to a point where, with how big our generation is, over 50, we are a graying nation. We are now the majority of America. It is unbelievable to me, not in a good way,
well, the problem,
that we don't have insurance coverage.
The problem is that the healthcare industry has been taken over by totally for-profit model. The insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies are not only running the show, but running the education of physicians. And physicians today they have algorithms in their head, they follow the rules, and they do not, by and large, most physicians don't think. They don't know how to solve problems. They have to follow the algorithm, and they follow a false model called the evidence-based medicine, which is a beautiful theory. But John Ioannidis, who's written a great paper, shows that most of the clinical research that's being done is actually false and based on false assumptions. Basic science is excellent, but most of the clinical research is bad.
If people want to reach Dr. Hedaya, we will give you exactly how to get to him. And one last question, which is sort of self-centered on my part, but anybody that knows me would not be surprised by that, as an only child. How much information can we get from you if we're doing it remotely?
I'm not sure what you mean. How much can you?
Well,
What do you mean?
in other words, I don't know where you are, and maybe I can't travel to you.
Oh, so the way we work. So I'm actually in New Jersey, so you're not far. But the way this works is we start with a 15-minute Zoom call or a 30-minute Zoom call, depending how much time you need. And so I can assess whether this is a good fit, whether I can help you, and you can assess whether this makes sense to you. If we go from there, then you have to have a visit to the office, which will mean you come to New Jersey. It's the shore. It's very nice, but you still have to come to Jersey. And you'll have to be here for probably a couple of days, maybe 3 days, maybe 2 days, sometimes 1 day, but you have to make the visit so I can do the physical exam, see you in person. We'll spend about, depending what we're treating. I mean, we treat aphasia, which is trouble expressing and understanding language.
Right.
We treat other neurological things. So it depends what we're treating and what your stage is, how long the visit is. And then after that, we do Zoom, and we do whatever we have to do on Zoom. And then you might have to make a visit here, once a year or something like that.
So let me say this again to the audience. We are talking about reversing and preventing dementia and Alzheimer's. What a medical breakthrough. Wow. Doctor, I think I'll be contacting you soon. Honestly. You know what? When you turn into a landmark birthday, like that's got a 0 beside it, mine was going to be 80.
Yeah.
I consider myself very lucky that I've still got my memory and my cognitive skills, but who knows how they're slipping. So you become, honestly, a lifeline to looking at this period, which I call our third act of our lives, as a period where you can accomplish things, where you can change your point of view, change and have a new career like I'm experiencing, and be cognitive of what you're doing and feel like you can lay down a future in front of you with confidence. That's what preventing and reversing dementia and Alzheimer's means to me. I want to congratulate you. I think you are a pioneer, and this is just the beginning of what should be a medical tsunami that everyone can take advantage of.
What you have to understand is that the medical institutions, they don't change so easily. So,
right? I know.
So that this is unfortunately not the standard of care right now, but God willing, it will be.
But there's you, and so that's a beginning, and that's hopeful enough for me. I want to thank you so much. There are so many people out there that have a parent, a grandparent, and even see themselves in their 50s having signs that make them very uncomfortable about how they're going to age. You give us hope. You give us actionable advice, and I could never thank you enough for being on this program.
Thank you, Diane.
Great respect for you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to get the information.
And we'll give you all the doctor's info. Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website at dianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.